Hello dear listener, please subscribe to our channel. Enjoy watching. Marriage has a funny way of sneaking up on you. At first, it's all thrill and excitement, the joy of sharing your life with someone. You're so busy planning the future and dreaming big together that you don't always see the real person beside you. That's how it was with Ally and me. She was everything I thought I wanted: charming, sharp, fun to be around. Our romance felt like it was straight out of a rom-com, and I married her without hesitation, thinking, yeah, this is it, forever. For a while, it was great. The kind of great where you catch yourself smiling in the middle of the day, thinking about her, about us. But after 5 years, I started noticing small cracks. They were subtle at first, the kind of things you could brush off or ignore if you weren't paying attention. But soon enough, they started to grow. It began with her late business dinners. I didn't mind them at first. Ally had always been driven and ambitious. But one day, I noticed a receipt on the kitchen counter from a place we'd never been together, a high-end Italian restaurant across town. She usually sent me selfies from her work events, just a quick picture with her team. But that night, there wasn't a single photo. Then there were the phone calls. She'd step out onto the porch to talk, lowering her voice so I couldn't hear. When I asked, she'd say it was a client call and that she didn't want me to be bothered. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't help feeling uneasy. Then, the business dinners became more frequent, the work events lasted longer, and her perfume, a heavy floral scent, seemed to linger every night she came home late. But the thing that really set me off was her phone. Ally had become obsessive about keeping it close. Her screen was always facing down, and it was locked with a new passcode. When she laughed at something she was reading, her fingers tapped out quick responses, and her eyes would flick up at me just to make sure I wasn't paying attention. One night, curiosity got the better of me. She'd left her phone on the kitchen counter, and I had a chance to look at it. The screen was locked, of course, but a gut feeling told me it wasn't just paranoia, something wasn't right. I barely slept that night, replaying every suspicious moment in my mind. 2 days later, my suspicions were confirmed. Ally had fallen asleep, and I managed to unlock her phone. Scrolling through her messages, I found them, the texts to Rick, a name I didn't recognize. They were suggestive, with "baby this" and "can't wait to see you that." Each word was like a punch to the gut. My wife was cheating on me. But here's the thing, I didn't confront her right away. That would have been too easy. I was furious, yes, but under the rage, there was something darker brewing. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling, and not just her, Rick too. I decided they would both pay. But it would be slow, calculated. I wanted them to think they were getting away with it, feeling safe and happy, and then I'd rip it all away. I did my research, finding out everything I could about Rick. He worked at a mid-sized tech company downtown, living the bachelor life with flashy nights out and big dreams of climbing the corporate ladder. I discovered his favorite bars, his routines, his weaknesses, and then I made my plan. It started with a friendly conversation. I showed up at his regular bar, dressed casually, like a guy just looking to blow off some steam. Sure enough, I spotted him, laughing with his buddies at the counter. I struck up a conversation, acting like I was new in town and needed recommendations for good spots to hang out. We hit it off instantly. Rick was a natural talker, full of stories about his wild dating life, his love of adventure. I couldn't help but feel a pang of rage watching him casually flirt with the bartender, not knowing his world was about to fall apart. We exchanged numbers, and soon, we were meeting up regularly. I became his new best friend, the guy he could talk to about anything. It didn't take long for him to start bragging about his latest conquest, a married woman who was bored with her husband. He didn't mention Ally by name, but I didn't need him to. Every detail he gave was enough to make me sick, but I played along, acting like the guy who didn't care, who thought he was living the life. Over time, I learned a lot about Rick's ambitions. He had his sights set on a promotion and was willing to do just about anything to get it. He'd hinted about knowing confidential things at work, insider info he wasn't supposed to have. That was all I needed to begin the next phase of my plan. I created a fake email account using a woman's name and pretended to be a new colleague from his office, sending him flirtatious messages. Rick, ever the ladies' man, took the bait without hesitation. Soon, he was confiding in me, sharing office gossip and even confidential details he thought would impress me. Every message was documented, screenshots, emails, the works. Once I had enough dirt, I printed everything and mailed it anonymously to his boss. Rick was called in for a meeting the following week. When we met up that night, he was furious, swearing his boss was out to get him. I nodded sympathetically, holding back a smile as he rambled on, oblivious to the fact that I was the one pulling the strings. But I wasn't done. I'd found skeletons in Rick's closet, past relationships he'd ended badly, women he'd ghosted, people he'd hurt along the way. I tracked down one of his exes, a woman named Leah who was more than happy to help me out. Together, we came up with a plan to make Rick's life even messier. Leah started posting old photos of them together, making it look like they were still seeing each other. She even hinted at a baby that never existed. Rick's reputation was spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, Ally had no idea. She continued seeing Rick, sneaking out to meet him while I pretended to be oblivious. Every time she lied to my face, it only strengthened my resolve. I could see the excitement in her eyes, the thrill she got from sneaking around, thinking she was in control. She didn't realize she was the one being played. After a few months, when Rick's work life was on the verge of collapse, I invited him over for a guys' night. He showed up looking exhausted, worn down from the chaos his life had become. I poured him a drink, and we sat in silence for a while before I finally let him in on the truth. "Rick," I said, my voice low and steady, "I know about Ally." He blinked, confusion flickering across his face, followed quickly by horror as he realized who I was talking about. I watched the color drain from his face as I spelled out every detail of what I'd done, the fake emails, the messages to his boss, even Leah's posts. He was speechless, too stunned to respond. I let him sit there, frozen in shock, before leaning in close and saying, "You took something from me, Rick. Now I've taken everything from you." But I wasn't finished. When Ally came home that night, I was waiting for her, all the evidence laid out in front of me. She tried to deny it at first, stumbling over her words, but eventually, she knew there was no point. She broke down, begging me to forgive her, to understand that she'd been unhappy. I told her there was no coming back from this. I filed for divorce the next day, and just to ensure Rick felt the consequences of his actions, I sent copies of the evidence to his HR department. He was fired within a week, and word of his indiscretions spread quickly. He left town soon after, his career in ruins, his reputation destroyed. As for Ally, I left her with nothing. I took the house, the car, everything. She walked away with the bare minimum, a shadow of the woman who'd once thought she had it all. Looking back, I can't say I'm proud of what I did. But every time I think of them together, of the lies and betrayal, I remind myself, they got what they deserved. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. If you leave a comment, tell us what you think about the story you heard. It's important to us and will help us find and tell stories that you find interesting. Thank you for watching us.